Hey guys, we are here in New Hampshire for take 2 of our first time doing a little coffee talk. We attempted this earlier this morning, but our technical crew failed and our microphone died. They have now been fired. So we're trying again now that we're charged. It's a little chillier than I'd like, but better than Florida 100-degree weather for sure, so we will take it. Alright, so what we are here for is to discuss how to increase the challenge of an exercise without changing the exercise, right? There are hundreds of thousands of exercises that we could be doing, but are they worth us doing, right? We know that there's a core group of movements that need to be repeated in trains because they're movements we use all the time in life and keeping our major muscles strong, right? So those are the movements that we focus on at our facility, and we focus on always changing them and making them different so that the challenge is always there and the person's always progressing and getting the most stimulation out of it, whether it be endurance or strength or power. So let's get to it. Roger, you have anything to say? Alright, so first what we're going to discuss is balance. Balance is an easy one when you're talking about body weight movements, right? So if I've for the past 4 or 5 months of quarantine been doing body weight squats to my couch, or even with a weight to my couch, or just, body weight squatting, an easy way to increase that balance challenge for someone looking for that, if that's what that client needs or that member needs, you would close your eyes, right? Closing your eyes is going to really increase the challenge of any movement because you're obviously taking away one of your senses. Now we want to think about this safely, right? Like, we don't need to be doing this anywhere where we could fall, and like I wouldn't do a closed eye movement on this dock, especially around Roger, because you might get pushed. Definitely closing your eyes on any type of body weight movement would be a great way to increase the challenge. We also have balance tools, right? I'm sure you guys are thinking about like the soft pads we have at the gym, or a lot of gyms have bosu balls, or maybe you have a bosu ball at home, right? Bosu balls are like the half physio balls. Same with the physio balls. Physio balls are a great way to increase the balance challenge. Just remember that any type of tool you are using, so if we use bosu for example, if I'm doing a squat on a bosu ball and I get really good at squatting on a bosu ball, that does not mean that my balance in natural life is better. That means that my balance on a bosu ball is better, if that makes sense, right? So just remember the context in which you're using them. So number 1, balance. Changing the balance of every movement. So if you were to do a push-up on like a soft pad on one hand, you're increasing the stability balance in the shoulder, right? Anything else? Okay, number 2. What? Yeah, of course. Any type of, he's reminding me that throughout this entire conversation, if you have any pain trying these challenges on your movements, obviously you do not do them, or obviously you regress them so that you do not have pain, right? And pain is difficult, right? Because everyone's pain levels are different. It's very hard to put a scale on it, right? Like, you can't say to someone, hey, are you on a scale of pain to 1 to 10? It's really hard because your idea of 8 could be someone else's idea of 3. So that's always a personal thing that you have to figure out. And the more you move, the more you understand that. The difference between discomfort and pain, right? So number 2, stances, double arm, single arm, how we're actually performing the movement. So an easy one to think about is a squat again, right? If I'm squatting on double legs and then I change it to a single leg, like we call a pistol squat at our gym, I'm really increasing that challenge, right? And if I can squat body weight, double leg, all the way to the ground, now if I pick one leg up and try to do the same, it's a totally different movement because I'm putting all that weight on one leg. So what we'd recommend is if you want to give it a shot, try it on an elevated surface, right? Try a pistol squat to your dining room table chair or your bed, something where you have more control, right? That is also obviously a great balance tool to use. Another option is if you're used to squatting with your feet under your hip, widen your stance up a little bit, right? If I widen my stance up on a squat, I'm going to stimulate more muscles. I'm going to stretch out more muscles. I'm going to challenge myself differently. And also, depending on the structure of your body, you might be more comfortable wider, you just don't realize it. Or narrower, right? Roger, for example, squats really narrow, feet together, which is going to really activate his core, his abdominals, and also increase the balance challenge again because his feet are not under his hips anymore, right? He's standing really narrow. So that's one we use a lot. We use an exercise called an anti-rotation or a pail-off, where we hold the band ahead of us and it's being pulled from a lateral attachment point. That's a great one to try to narrow your feet on, right? We teach it with our feet under our hips. We can put our feet together, have that resistance ahead of us, and you're going to get a lot more core activation. In the same category, if I'm doing a now loaded exercise like a shoulder press, and I'm always been doing double arm shoulder press for the past 5 months of quarantine, try a single arm shoulder press, right? That's going to really change the challenge because now my abdominals are not loaded the same. I'm not working all the same muscles at the same time, right? Sorry? Yeah, or alternating, right? Any type of little tweak to a movement increases it. So an alternating shoulder press, right? Left and then right and then left and then right. Yeah, exactly. That will really increase the challenge. Remember, the body has lots of muscles. So any little tweak you make, you're going to activate different muscles together. I think I've probably said that enough. Another idea of stance is your push-ups, right? If you're used to doing push-ups directly under your shoulders and you can bust out, 20 of them, try pushing your right arm an inch up and keeping your left arm down. It doesn't seem like a major change, but once again, right back to if you've been doing repetitive movements in that same forearm for months and months and months, the body is pretty used to it, right? So try changing it up. You'll feel a lot more difficult. Yeah, wider hands, narrower hands. Any little tweak in your stance will make a major difference. Even when you're squatting, if you were to lift, which this might cross categories into a balance versus stance, in a squat, if I pick my heel up and squat, or if I move my foot slightly ahead of the other foot, once again, I'm going to activate one of those legs more than the other leg, creating a different challenge, right? Anything to say?
Nothing, you got it all.
Yeah, good.
What?
What?
I think you should do some push-ups and squats while I talk.
I should do some push-ups and squat? Why haven't you been doing push-ups and squat while I've been talking?
Not cold, girl.
Oh, I am cold. I am a little chilly. But I have the next subject. So here we go. Tools. At home, if you have a dumbbell, right, and for the last 5 months of COVID, you've been using your dumbbell, try changing up that object, right? And it obviously, I know everyone's limited on tools, so it might be a sandbag you get from Lowe's and you tape it with duct tape and you start holding that instead, right? Like any type of tool change is going to make a massive difference. So at our gym, we use a lot of balls, big balls, little balls, kettlebells. The major difference between a kettlebell and a dumbbell, if you're using the same weight, is the distribution of the weight, right? The dumbbell's weight is spread out throughout the dumbbell. The kettlebell's weight is all one solid mass, making it a lot more challenging. People don't realize it. You hand someone a 20-pound dumbbell, they feel fine. You hand someone a 20-pound kettlebell, and it's like, oh, what is this heavy, right? But once again, increasing the challenge without really changing much, right? I'm not changing much other than the tool. So we use stuff like that all the time. Things like squats, Bulgarian split squats, lunging, right?
Yeah, I mean,
further away, right? Like if you're at home and you're really limited on objects and you've been squatting with, a soup can held up to your chest like a goblet squat, if you now extend that soup can away from your body with arms locked out and squat, you're going to feel lots of different things working, right? Obviously, your shoulders are going to get a lot more work. Your abdominals are going to get a lot more work. When your arms are close to your body, your core is doing less than when your arms are extended from your body, especially loaded. So that's what we like to use for tools. Thoughts?
No, I think you covered all of those pretty good. Let's see you do some squats and push-ups while I talk next, though. No? Gonna stay in there? Okay, she's gonna stay here. Okay, so another way of thinking about changing your exercise variability to improve or moderate whatever you need to do is to learn about how the muscle works, right? So there's three muscle action phases. There's eccentric, isometric, and concentric. We got eccentric is when you're elongating the muscle. Let's say I'm doing a bicep curl. When I'm going down, I'm lengthening my muscle. I'm eccentrically loading my muscle. That's one. When I'm isometrically holding my muscle, I'm holding it straight out, tense, right? And then when I'm concentrically holding my muscle, I'm curling it back in, contracting it back in. So there's 3 muscle phases we always want to work on. And especially when you're newbie, when you're somebody just joined our gym or somebody that's new to exercise in general, everybody tends to bust them out really fast, not knowing what to do, using momentum. Yeah, absolutely, using momentum. So a lot of times what we like to do is do tempo, which is 2-1-2. What is 2-1-2? It's essentially going down 2 seconds slow, holding at the bottom for 1 second, and coming up 2 seconds in 2 seconds, rather than up straight up fast. What that does for us is it shows us that you have control of the exercise. It also shows us that your muscles are working to control the exercise. Hence, your muscles are working better when you have to spend time thinking about going slow down, going slow up, and holding it at the bottom, right? Let me think. Anything else I should add to that?
Pausing.
Oh yeah, pausing. So at the top, a lot of times we want to make sure that somebody stops before they go on to the next rep. What that shows us is that you can basically have control of the top of a movement to essentially stop yourself from going.
Well, you're able to like walk out the joint at the top of the movement, right? You're fully extending so that you're showing that you're not, once again, using momentum by bouncing up and down, right? More importantly, you're able to stop and start again, right? Like, for example, a great example is elderly people, which not one of my favorite words because we have lots of elderly people and they're very strong and some of them are stronger than I am. So the idea would be is if you're watching someone trip, right? So when I watch an older person trip, if they're able to trip and then stop and regain their balance, that's awesome, right? They're far advanced. If someone trips and you know that after they trip, there's no way they can save themselves, right? They're going down at that point. So this type of exercising, having someone perform a movement and then stop like that, so maybe it would be a walking lunge, okay? I want you to take 1 lunge forward. I want you to step, lunge, come out of it, and stop without falling into the next lunge, right? That's the idea of that training, that pause training, is can you control your movements without just falling through them? A technique I use a lot is talking people step by step through the repetition. Every phase of the exercise, I break down into words, and they follow my words as they do it. They don't go ahead of my words. They don't stay behind my words. Same idea as tempo, right? That's just me delivering tempo in a different way. Yeah? Here we go.
And hopefully you guys can hear us pretty clear because it's really rough out here and it's also pretty windy. So another one that we would want to change for a variable of an exercise would be a weight. So just like anything, if you make a weight harder or heavier, it's going to make the exercise harder, right? A lighter weight is going to make it easier. And that goes into rep ranges. That goes into, hey, I want to work on my strength. Okay, well, a good way to work on strength is to make sure first that you can do this body weight, the exercise properly. Second, that you can do it with light weight pretty good. Once you get into that point, then we can start working on, hey, let's step up that weight a little bit. Let's go a little bit heavier and try to make the exercise a little bit harder for your body to extend fully, to do that full range of motion. And same thing going on lighter, right? If you want to try to get, let's say, more muscle endurance on something, you want to make sure that we're working on, hey, I want to try to do 20 reps with lighter weight just because I want to get that endurance, right? I'm not necessarily looking for a strength phase that time you're training, but I'm looking for endurance. And there's also medium weight. Let's say you can do something we tend to use as coaches more like percentages, right? So if it's between 80 to 100% of what we think your weight management is, we'll use that more of a strength. If it's around 70%, we'll use that more of middle endurance, strength also. But around 50 or 60 would be more of our endurance phase. That's what we would like, hey, let's crank up those reps to 20, 30 reps and try to work on that endurance. Numbers don't really matter. As you guys know, we use every kind of numbers out there. Some people ask us, why do you use 7? Why do you use 14? Why do you use 17? There is no right or wrong set of numbers. I don't know who made this 5, 10, 15, 20 rep thing. There's even and uneven numbers, and really doesn't matter what you put out there. There is sort of ranges between 0 and 5. You want to work on power, and let's say go lighter and go faster, or go heavier and go smaller reps. That's both working on power. That's more athletics, right? But as we get older, we also want to make sure we're able to, if you're going to trip, be able to step faster to be able to land or stop yourself from tripping over. That's a little bit of power. We need that still in our lives.
And with weight, there's no point in, I always say to people, like, there's no point in performing a chest press, a heavy chest press, if you can't perform push-ups, right? So you always start body weight, get your 20 reps in, get your max high rep range in, and then go to your weight.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's why a lot of you guys that know us, we like to work with high rep ranges in the beginning. We want to make sure that just like your muscles are working, your brain's working, and we want to challenge the brain to be working every rep. And the more reps we give it in the beginning to challenge itself, the more it has to think, am I doing this right? And we can talk to you while you're doing those 20 reps easier to make your brain start thinking, okay, this is how I should feel when I'm doing this. And it's not going to happen overnight. A lot of times it takes a long time to adjust to that. But that's in the beginning, and later on we'll use it again just to build muscle endurance. But in the beginning we want to use longer reps to try to make sure that you're doing things right? So that's reps, and then rest time. Rest time goes hand in hand with weight and goes hand in hand with reps. The less rest time you give yourself, as a lot of you know, the harder anything's going to be, right? If I'm doing 10 reps and I give myself 3 minutes rest, that's great, but how much weight am I pushing? If I'm pushing a lot of weight, I'm gonna need all those 3 minutes. If I'm not pushing a lot of weight, I might, for resting. What do you mean? For recovery, make sure my muscles recover back to being able to go almost 100% back at it again, right? However, in real life, you might not have a lot of rest time to be able to perform that again. So you always want to keep your goals in mind. You always want to keep what is it you're training for, right? Are you training for quality of life? Yeah, then maybe you want to keep it at 1 minute rest time, 45 seconds, 1 minute and 30. That's pretty good average. What you don't want to do is you don't want to give yourself not enough rest time and collapse, right? Or not be able to get to a certain number of reps to start, for your muscles not to recover well enough, where you start messing around with your technique, with your range of motion, when your form breaks down, exactly. And another one that goes hand in hand with that is the range of motion. We want to always try to go full range of motion on everything, unless we can't get to that point because of our strength level or because of our joint issues. What we as coaches look for is making sure that if you can get to full range of motion, it gives us a good idea of where your joint stability is, where your muscle stability is, and where we're strong and deficient at, right? So a lot of times, if you're really strong and you can get to full range of motion, we're going to start loading you up with weight, right? And you want to go full range of motion with weight, and as you get stronger and stronger, we're going to start partially repping you. Essentially what that means is, hey, let's go to a 90-degree squat, half squat, with a lot of weight, because we don't have to go as far down, right? That's a different type. It's not the same squat as a full range. I'm not saying do one or the other. I'm saying they work different goals. It's not necessarily always bad to do half reps as long as you know what you're using them for, correct? Or if you have some joint issues, it might be as far as we go, and that's okay. On the other end, hey, let's say I don't have the strength to do a full push-up or a full squat. That's where we do halves, right? Knowing that we're building the strength of your legs or your arms to be able to get to that point of being able to do a full range of motion. It might not be your joints that are holding you back. It might be your muscle, your strength level. And that's why we want to slowly build, let's say, get 10 partial push-ups so you can build your shoulders, and over time get to the goal of doing a full range of motion push-up, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of this sounds a little bit complicated, but the idea of it all is to just change the variable, right? Keep the major movements the same. And when I say major movements, pushing, pulling, hinging at your hip, hinging at your knee, so lunging, Bulgarian split squats, pushing, meaning push-ups, meaning chest press, meaning shoulder press, pulling, meaning rowing, meaning pull-ups. So basically what we're saying is change up the variable, intensify the movement somehow, right? Whether it be creating a half rep, a full range of motion that you might not be used to, moving your hands around, moving the weight around, moving the rep range around. Anything you change is going to change the challenge, right? So minimal small changes is what we're talking about here. The last thing we're going to talk about here is your grip, right? So number one, if you're doing a bench press and I'm narrow stance, which is how we teach people to do pressing initially, palms are in, we call it neutral, facing your palms in towards each other, is going to allow you to really take advantage of using your posterior chain, your lats and your triceps and your shoulder blades versus letting the shoulders do all the work, right? We live in a society of shoulder happy people because everything we do, even with all this virtual training we've been doing, I'll see myself in the camera and I'm like this, trying to coach the person. I'm like, darn, I got my shoulders back. So I really feel for all those people that work at computers all day, right? You're definitely very frontal dominant human. So it's our job to make sure that yes, we need you to press, because when you fall down on your face and you can't get up, would be our fault for not teaching you how to push yourself up, right? But on the same token, the ability, you should be using your back to do that as well, right? So that's why we teach that. It protects the shoulder joint from being overused. But there are also other variables, right? So if you've been nailing a neutral chest press for years, try widening it up, right? You're probably going to want to reduce your weight on something like that, but you're going to isolate more pectorals and more delts than you won't be allowed or able to use the back as much. Same thing if you're doing a pull-up, right? We teach chin-ups first because they're easier. Get someone to do a chin-up and then move them to a pull-up, right? So flipping your grip. You can do mixed grip, which is one palm forward and one palm back, right? The issue with that is people tend to really overuse that one bicep, so just be careful with stuff like that. Make sure that the advance that you're using is right for you, right? You don't have to pick. I don't know why, for some reason, we always think we have to choose the hardest thing possible on the list. Choose the easiest thing. Get through that, move on to the next. It's the same way we do our programming in the gym. You have to accomplish the easiest before you can get to the medium-ish and the hardish and the really hard and the extra hard. And then also on grip is the object in which you're gripping, right? So we have in the gym something called a fat grip, which are these red plastic tools that go over dumbbells or a bar, right? So the idea is to increase the circumference of which you have to hold. That's going to really change up the stimulation of the muscles because I'm holding different, right? Your grip has a lot to do with how you're going to lift a weight. We always see people death gripping, especially on the TRX straps when they're pulling. You can see the impressions on them because they're holding on for dear life, which is great because you're strengthening your grip, but you want to understand to use your back muscles and not require so much on your grip strength or things like that. The fat grips, if you haven't used them, let us know and we'd be happy to let them or get them into your training a little bit. They're really great just to change up the grip, right? Increase the challenge of an exercise you might be really good at, and then also it helps you keep your shoulders back, right? Keeps them down and back, which a lot of people have problems with if we're not stable in the shoulder joint. So yeah, just fun, different things to try out. Any thoughts or comments? Yeah? Okay. Well, we're really happy it didn't rain this time. Hopefully it's recording my voice right now. And please let us know below if you have any comments or questions. We didn't demonstrate anything today as we normally might. So if there's ideas you have on exercises you might want to try and you want a good example of it, we'd be happy to send you a video of that or even just talk to you about it. So always here to help. Let us know. For now, we're going to continue our vacation on this chilly August day in New England. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thanks so much. Take care.